Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by Tony Gavin, who's only probably about 20 miles away from me, maybe even less than that. Tony is now his bio says he's a podiatrist, but I'd be interested to know, Tony, would you describe yourself as a podiatrist?
Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. It's interesting because, yeah, I am a podiatrist, but I don't really think of myself as a podiatrist these days. I suppose I think of myself much more as someone who's involved in businesses that have kind of grown over a number of years to have the best impact for patients, really, in the world of kind of private health. So I suppose that's what I see myself as more, even though my roots are from podiatry. I'm still heavily involved in the world of podiatry, but my function isn't really looking after people's feet anymore directly in that way. So it's much more around the kind of the business stuff, really.
Yeah, no, well, that's really interesting because that's my driver in terms of where I've moved to as well in this. And although it all interlinks, it's never like a one. I'm not going to say one shoe fits all, but I've just said it now anyway. But it's and I think just having known you and having known some of the businesses that you're involved in, and you're obviously talking from your practice in Staley Bridge at the moment, I'm really looking forward to hearing a bit more about you and how you got to where you did. So, whereabouts are you from originally?
So I'm from Liverpool originally. Don't hold that against me. So yeah, short journey down the M62. So yeah, grew up in Liverpool, school in Widnes, and then I ended up in Manchester first of all in 1999, and not really been away since. So goodness, that's a long time, isn't it? 24 years, long time.
Yeah, whereabouts in Liverpool? I know we had a brief chat about it because I'm from Southport originally, so I've got quite a lot of family in Liverpool.
Yeah, so Halewood, Dad used to work in the Ford factory there, so that's why we moved out there from. We were closer to the city centre when I was a toddler, and then yeah, we moved out to Halewood, which I think was a big culture shock for us all because it was kind of semi-rural at the time. It was like lots of farmers' fields and all the rest of it. But yeah, that's the town that raised me really, and then obviously grew up with a big rivalry with Manchester and would never have believed anyone who told me I'd be spending my life living in Manchester. But Manchester's been very welcoming and it's been a great place to be.
So, what made you move over to Manchester then?
So first moved to Manchester through work. So when I was 21, I used to be a prison officer. Um, Long distant past. It was 26 years ago, isn't it? So moving to Manchester made sense. For work really, and also my main kind of hobby, interest, passion at the time was in the world of salsa dancing, which is that's kind of a bit of a conflict with being a prison officer, isn't it? And then just stayed in Manchester ever since. And my late wife was from Manchester, from Staley Bridge, where I am now. So kind of all the roots end up throwing down, children, marriage, businesses, all the rest of it is in Manchester. But it's been a great city for me, Manchester. It really has.
Mm. So yeah, so how did that? Well, not that it was a combination, but so how long had you been doing salsa for?
So I started dancing salsa when I was, oh goodness, I must have been 21 or 22, and it was a hobby at first, kind of in the evenings, and then it being kind of a really quite a small close knit community, and at the time there wasn't that many guys involved in the world of salsa. So as you kind of got better and improved, you ended up being kind of in demand to kind of run some beginners classes, which then kind of improved into doing some intermediate classes, and then getting involved in doing a couple of kind of performances at local clubs and stuff. And then I'd always kind of had, I suppose I'd always had been a little bit business minded, and was teaching some classes and making some money from doing that. And then started having the ideas of putting on some big salsa events, which is what we ended up doing. And we ended up putting on some enormous salsa events, the biggest one for kind of 3,000 people all at once. We used to hire Butlins for the weekend, and this was at the time, I remember, kind of late 90s, around the turn of the millennium. Salsa was an enormous craze, it really was. So it was a sweet spot of time, really, which gave me some. It was interesting because it wasn't all real. Because when there's a huge demand for something in a niche area, very easy to market and to advertise and to get numbers to things, which was a bit of an illusion for me about what business is really like. But it certainly gave me a huge appetite for creating live events. Still have that passion today. We still create live events because I didn't, as much as I love the digital world, I love transactional business. I love providing solutions. Nothing really lights my fire like having hundreds or thousands of people in one place together for an event at one specific time, because magical things happen there when people come together, and I think that will always be my greatest passion in business.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Question there, did I, Andy? Sorry, I went.
No, I think you did. No, you did. I think you did. It's just, I think so. I guess, was that like Ricky Martin time as well? Did he contribute to the success?
I think he did. Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, as much as at the time we all used to, be quite dismayed if anyone was talking about Ricky Martin, I think he certainly helped the cause. But yeah, there was loads of Latino music at the time. There was loads of it was out in the charts, and there was a definite flavour of the time for that kind of Latino music was a big part of it. And for me at the time, it was just an entirely new world. This lad from Liverpool who'd the most exotic thing I'd ever heard or seen was Come Dancing on a Sunday night on the telly, and for me it was just this whole new world that opened up to people I would never normally meet from different cultures, different backgrounds, and I got to travel and I got to see just opportunity is what I got to see from it. And as a young man from a part of Liverpool which wasn't a particularly well-off area, and all the usual struggles of got to comprehensive school in the 1980s. It was just a breath of fresh air what was kind of available through that, and I think it changed me fundamentally, those experiences and those times.
So where were these events that you were putting on then?
Yeah, so we used to do Manchester City Centre was where lots of the classes were. Then I ended up doing some classes in Oxford. And then the larger events were kind of around the northwest, and then we used to hire Butlins in Skegness, where the big ones were happening. And then I would travel to events throughout Europe and the States. So yeah, it was a surreal experience. There was lots of travel involved. But yeah, it was just a wonderful experience. It really did kind of change my view of the world, because I suddenly got to see so much more of it, and some very different types of people who are really instrumental into my development in my early 20s, really, as a person.
And then, so at this point, were you still doing the prison guards thing as well, or?
Yeah, so I did that for, it was about 4 years, and that was a great experience as well at the same time, because I used to work it was like an American style boot camp. I was really lucky to be working in this jail, working with young offenders, 18 to 21-year-olds. And I was really fortunate to have the opportunity to get trained to deliver lots of offending behaviour programs. So I learned lots about group work. I learned lots about how to challenge people's thinking, how to get people to develop their problem solving skills, and how to curb their impulsive behaviour. So when I look back to my 20s, it was just such a rich learning environment of what happened by pure fortune, really. And these opportunities did just keep coming for me, and really did shape me. So yeah, after my time there, I suppose I was much more interested in what I could do kind of on my own rather as part of a system, because I think in being in the prison service, I could see lots of wonderful things there and opportunity, but also I found the limitations within such a large system. It didn't really gel with my personality or what I wanted to achieve. I think it just felt a little bit too constrained for me to be able to be satisfied in life, I think, is the honest answer to that. I take my hat off to those people who can work in that system, and it needs those people because they do amazing work. But it just couldn't be for me. And I think that's been a theme through my life, really. I sometimes get labelled a little bit as a rebel. I don't think I'm necessarily rebellious. I think I just have this drive to create my own and do my own. It's just who I am.
And so what was the next step then once you realised that you wanted to do that? What happened?
Yeah, so I just left because you're kind of young and free, aren't you? And you can do these things, and went out there to make the salsa thing my full-time thing, which I did for a number of years. And then I met my late wife in the world of dancing, and our paths would never have crossed otherwise. She was studying down in Oxford at the time, and then we got together, and I think we kind of both agreed that this lifestyle that I had wasn't going to be forever, and that we should. Becky was training to be an engineer at the time, and I felt that I was at a place where I wanted to go to university, because I didn't when I was 18, because I made different choices and decisions at the time. But with bringing with me going into choosing a degree, my knowledge of myself really as to what would work for me, because back in the when I was 18, I would have gone under the maths degree. That's you know, I had places offered to go and study maths at Liverpool and Queen's, and that was the way I was going to go. But I knew much more about myself, that I wanted to work with people, and healthcare jumped out. And I was looking at physiotherapy, I was looking at dentistry, and I discovered podiatry almost by accident whilst flicking through a prospectus. But it really jumped out at me, podiatry, because the scope of practice was so wide, and also I could clearly see there was an opportunity to have a portfolio career. There was a big opportunity to work in the world of private practice, and it just seemed to tick so many boxes. And I have to say, it's not disappointed. It's given me so much more than I could see at that point, but it was definitely the right choice for me.
And so when you meant say portfolio career, just expand what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think I knew enough about myself that I always wanted my career to have different elements to it. And I think with having previously run a business for myself, I knew that what motivates me is every day being different and being able to have different things, being able to set up different income streams, being able to have different projects in different arenas that would keep me motivated, fire me up, but also give me the opportunity to take risks and failure to not be catastrophic. So the opportunity to try things and do things and learn from it, but it not necessarily wipe me out or destroy my career in that respect. So I think that's what I mean by that. I probably couldn't have been able to put that into words back 15, 20 years ago, but having gone through it now and understood a bit more about myself, I think that was the reasoning.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see it and empathise with that. So once you made the decision to do podiatry, where did you go to do that?
Yeah, so I went to Huddersfield, and again, I was so fortunate, because there was an incredible team there at Huddersfield who were lecturing at the time. They still are an incredible team, so different faces there. It was a wonderful environment to learn in, particularly as, how old was I at the time? I was kind of 29 when I started there. So I was young enough to have fun with with those who just finished their A-levels, but also kind of mature enough to have my kind of life together and really dedicate myself to studying and learning. So I think it was a real sweet spot. And I think university would have been wasted on me when I was 18. I think it was a really good point in my life to be going and doing that. Did well in my studies, really applied myself, but my plan was always to come straight to my own private practice when I graduated, which at the time was very unusual, and I was definitely counselled against doing that by everyone I spoke to. But I was determined that I was going to go straight into my own practice, which is what I did. I opened Gavin House Clinic 15 years ago now. But there was a plan to do this, to mitigate the risks, because I did listen to people's what they were saying and why I shouldn't, and I did everything I could to kind of mitigate the risks of what they saying could happen. So a number of things that I did back in those early stages is I was fortunate enough to get some great mentors from private practices, very different shaped private practices to what I wanted, because I wanted to learn what happens in this type of practice, what problems do they have, what are the benefits, and then an entirely different type of practice, what happens here, what are the risks, what are the benefits. I also kept some of my educators from university, kept in touch with them, kept going back and helping out at the university, doing some kind of visiting spots and clinics just to make sure I had this ecosystem around me where I wasn't isolated professionally and where I had people I could speak to about things. And I think that was a big part of those first few years of helping with that transition, was staying connected to people who had been around the block quite a few times, so I could just have the benefit, and certainly grateful for that, the benefit of their experience, really.
Mm. And then what was your vision then at that point? You mentioned about having a portfolio career. Did you have a clear plan of what you did want those businesses to be like?
Yeah, so initially I did. Initially, the clinic was going to be the umbrella, and the clinic was going to do lots of many different things, and was going to be as large as possible, and perhaps multi-site, multi-locations. But plans change, don't they, as time goes on, as opportunities arise, because at first it's like any business plan when you first make one up, 90% of it, you're just making it up. It's just a whole load of assumptions. Then reality comes and checks with your business plan, and it evolves and it morphs into something that is based on much more reality. Then it only gets limited by your own beliefs and mindsets, doesn't it? But that's a different conversation. So yeah, the initial plan was to grow the clinic into a large multidisciplinary clinic doing many different services, and we tried many different things over the years. Once we've been running the clinic for about 7 years though, and part of the drive was the clinic was always to create a business, not a job. That was the mantra. And that's not because I'm lazy, or maybe I am inherently lazy to some degree. I wanted to create a business. I wanted something that could work without me, because I believe that's what would have stability and give me more opportunity to do more things in the world of business, and to kind of serve more patients, and to give flexibility. And I was so very pleased we did that, because we had a bit of a tragedy. We lost our daughter 9 years ago now, nearly 10 years ago, and we were able to, both of us, Becky was my business partner and wife, we were able to step away from the business for the best part of a year, really, and it continued to generate an income. The patients all still got looked after, and the business was still here when I was able to return to work in kind of full capacity. So the flexibility, when I talk about kind of portfolio careers or having different income streams or automating businesses, they offer protection for your life in general, really, and allow business continuity, really. Because I think something I see lots in healthcare is because we can do everything and we are everything, we end up in that spot, but then the business is entirely reliant upon us being at our best all of the time. And as we know, life can throw all kinds of things at you. And for all of us, we've all got those stories, haven't we? And I had a couple of quite, everyone who knows me knows, a couple of quite severe things happen in my life, where very, very thankful to have businesses that were kind of quite robust and great people in those teams to be able to keep charging forward when I wasn't able to. So yeah, so that was the original thinking. And then I'd always had this thought when setting up the practice. It was probably about a year after we'd opened, and I was writing standard operating procedures for the practice, and I was negotiating clinical waste collection and a couple of other things. And it just struck me that why isn't there a resource available where these standard operating procedures are available as a template? Because there must be 10,000 podiatrists around the country, either one, not having these practice procedures in place written down, or two, trying to write them themselves. And I thought, that's madness, because 90% of it is the same for all of us. There should be a resource where this exists. And then I'm trying to negotiate clinical waste collection, and podiatrists' requirements are specific and unique. And I thought, this is crazy. I'm dealing with this enormous company which is going to hospitals, GP practices, veterinary surgeons. I want something quite different than what they have, and I'm paying quite a lot of money for a service, and they don't really care about me. And I thought, why don't we collectively come together and get a solution that fits podiatry? Because I'm sure they'd be interested if there was 5,000 podiatrists saying, yeah, we all want it to look like this and to do this, and what price can we get if there's 5,000 of us? So that was kind of the initial thoughts, probably 5 years before Osgo was created. To create Osgo was this understanding that through running and growing a practice, we need a resource there that helps the private practitioner, because the average private practitioner hasn't come from a business background like I did. Usually they're coming from a healthcare background, and the business skills and the business hygiene protocols and procedures, they have to be learned and picked up. And of course, it's hard to do that alongside looking after patients.
And how was that received then when you started to speak with people about it?
When so kind of as in terms of first floating the idea? And
yeah, just getting, so I presume you did a bit of market research to establish if you thought it was going to be profitable and successful.
Yeah, so it's interesting really, because it kind of started off initially as, we're just going to do this, we're going to create this and do it, which was the initial idea was just to create all of the resource and put them in a place where people could come and get them and hopefully buy some other products alongside it. So that was the initial thinking of, actually we can create a business here which supplies some products to practices, and the reason they will come to the site will be for all of these resources. So that they were the first thoughts. And then did meet with some distributors and spoke with a few very wise CEOs, one from an enormous pharmaceutical distributor company whose his insight into stuff was incredible really, and very quickly realized that as a business proposition that wasn't a good business proposition for a whole host of reasons, and he encouraged me to go look at kind of membership models where you're able to deliver more value to members, because it's constantly motivated to be able to deliver the value to the members, because you create an ecosystem and you're able to do much more for them, rather, because like you said, if you just put things on a shelf and say there it is, you can go take it, it's like the wonderful hills that are behind my house. They've got the most amazing views, they're great for your blood pressure, they're great for your fitness, but they are empty and the Trafford Centre is full and people are hustling around to go and chase something else, because something is kind of free and openly available but isn't kind of cohesively brought together, then a few people will wander and go and take it, but the value is missed by most. So it was this huge understanding around how you create value ultimately for patients through bringing together practitioners in an environment where they get massive value at the same time, and you're able to do so much more for them in that kind of membership model environment, which is what we did. So that caused, of course, if we're going to create a membership model, we couldn't just have resources sat on a shelf for them to come and do. We had to do a whole lot more. So we had to do many different things, such as creating CPD events, getting them a whole host of partner deals on things like their credit cards and their machine servicing and their insurances, for their income protection insurances, and we had to develop tools that they could use online for their marketing. And so we ended up delivering for them 100 times more than we ever ordered. It was just this resource that just sat there. And Osgo then took on its own life form, and at first it was aimed just entirely at podiatrists, because that's what we knew. And then over time, those tools have been used by many other healthcare professionals, physiotherapists, sports therapists, chiropractors, osteopaths, and recently we're in the world of dentistry as well, with a slightly different model and different company name. But it did take on its own life form because there was clearly an appetite for this, and we grew to thousands of members very fast, because it was a disproportionate value. The amount that they paid for a membership was tiny compared to what they got back from it and what they could save off any of the deals that they did, which allowed us to put more into it and create bigger and better events, and to deliver more education, and to get more deals, and to deliver more software tools for them that would solve more of their problems for them. So yeah, the people I spoke to were right, and I was wrong, and I'm glad I listened.
So yeah, I'm intrigued. What other advice did you get from them, from their memberships? That I really like the value piece, because I think that's a really interesting thing that I think customers don't always understand. Obviously, it's natural to look at the price, isn't it, of something, or the cost of something, rather than the value.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think, yeah, I think a number of them took me through a journey about, because I think previous to my development in understanding that a price is something you stare at. So someone who's providing a product or a service, they stare at the price from one side, and whoever's buying it stares it from the other. And really, it's a bit of an illusion. It's just something that sits between the two of you. There's this agreed metric of what something is actually worth. But how much are you both going to put into this for this? You know, you come together as a business, as an exchange of value, isn't it? Someone's bringing something, someone's bringing money, and you exchange. And if you're selling 10p sweets, they're 10p sweets. It's just 10p, and that is the value. If you can change someone's business, the value is greater. But also there needs to be a motivation to keep bringing more and more value, because it's a relationship base, isn't it, rather than just transactional. So most of us these days, we spend a load of money on Amazon or similar things, don't we? With the product we want, and is it the right product, and it's the right price, and then we go buy it, and it's very, very transactional. But there are other things that we interacted with that we just get so much more extra value. In the world of healthcare, there's so much more we can deliver for patients. So what may start off as a patient coming in with an Achilles tendon problem, after 10 years, that value of that relationship with that patient could have extended to their entire family. It could have extended to 7 other different ailments. There could have been enormous preventative things, could have been identified to stop, terrible health outcomes for them or their family members. It's not an Amazon shop, that transaction. It's about people, isn't it? And it's about understanding more about them and being motivated to bring more solutions for them, which is what brilliant these days in the world of private practice, because healthcare providers are actively seeking more solutions. And I know certainly you'll be more aware of this than anyone with the technology that you're able to bring to practitioners to offer more solutions. So it is no longer about, come to me for some hands-on therapy for your painful back or whatever it is they're presenting with. It's a whole host of solutions that we're able to make people's lives better with. And I think membership models, or relationship models, I prefer to call them, it really does encourage how do you develop that relationship. Like any relationship, it's what you put into it that comes back tenfold, isn't it? So, and when it is a close relationship like that, there's a defined relationship there. You're not just turning up to buy something. There's more to it than that. You can put so much more into it, and you both get so much more from it. And I think in the world of business, that's the bit that excites me more than anything.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with all of that, really. I think that's something which sits with my values of developing that and wanting to help businesses rather than, in our case, selling equipment or education. So how do we help drive them forward? And that's, I suppose I look at it more, because I've not been hands-on clinical. I think of it more from the clinician standpoint rather than the patient, but it's all interlinked anyway, trying to aid them being able to develop it. And how have you seen that change over the last few years in terms of the private healthcare system and this development of that? Has it changed?
Yeah, I think it's definitely changed. Certainly when I see our members and their offerings, they are so much more focused on customer experience. They are so much more focused on delivering more solutions, more choices, more options. They are adding so much more value into their businesses for what they can do. And I think that's driven by a couple of things. I think intrinsically healthcare practitioners care about people. That's why they're healthcare practitioners. They want to help people and make things better for people. I think there's been a change in demand in the world of private practice as NHS provision is reducing. I think there's been an increase in people's value they place on their wellness. Certainly over the last few years, when the world changed as much as it did, people do value their wellness and health much more than they ever did. But I also think their wellness and health has been challenged in ways that it hasn't been before. So a lot of private practices, they had difficult times when we went through lockdowns and they weren't able to see patients or to trade in the same way. Some suffered terribly through that. Some saw opportunity and changed what they were offering, changed their offering overall, and increased the amount of things they can do for those patients they've got a relationship with. So I think there's been much more attention on how do we get better? how do we deliver even more? How do we either help more people or get those people we are currently seeing in different ways? And I think you end up with a bit of a critical mass then. I think if, you know, your nearest 5 clinics that when you're running a practice you keep half an eye on, and you see that they're investing in equipment, they're investing in slick websites, they're investing in a process to onboard, they're investing in writing material for their website and blogs and promoting and helping people in a genuinely giving way up front, then I think other people see that movement and start to go in the same direction as well. And I think it's been brilliant. I think it has. I still think we're such a long way from what we can achieve and what we can do, because most of us in this country, from a health perspective, do come from a paradigm which is different to the rest of the world, because we have the NHS, and I think that does set us apart from the rest of the world, in that the nation's views on their health and wellness are different than they are in other countries, because in other countries there's always been a monetary value attached to it to some either greater or lesser degree, almost all of the countries anyway. So I think this is all new for this country, and I think there is huge opportunity there to help more people in different ways. But it's understanding how that sits now in this world where healthcare does, in the world of private practice, have a monetary value attached to it. And I think at first a lot of people get really uncomfortable as soon as profits and healthcare are in the same conversation. I think in this country, and I've always said that there's nothing inherently bad about making a profit. What you do with your profits exposes your personality and who you genuinely are as a person, but making a profit in itself is not a bad thing. And the biggest disservice you can do to your patients is not make a profit, because if you're not making a profit, then you're not going to be there for them next year. So it is important that practices do make a profit and get comfortable with that. But I get all of the intrinsic problems of mixing the financial stuff with the genuinely caring for patients at the same time, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's a conversation that I think the biggest change we've seen over the last few years is clinicians are having this conversation with themselves much more, and there's much more of an understanding about it.
Yeah, that was really interesting insight to it, because it's like we see a lot of this and there is a change, but that thing about clients not wanting to profit, and like we will speak to, say, a business owner who maybe has a team of people and trying to bring them on board with how they do encourage that team member to not sell is the wrong word, but maybe to get them to use a particular piece of equipment. And so why do you think that is a challenge within the world of whether it's physio, podiatry, healthcare, in terms of that financial element of things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a tendency to want to make financial decisions for our clients and patients. And I think that comes from a place of good intentions. But I think ultimately it is not our place to do that. I think it is our place as clinicians or healthcare providers to give patients choices and to offer them the best things available for them, and for them to make the financial choices themselves, because it's our money values are going to be entirely different to their money values, what they're prepared to spend money on. They may spend £200 a month on cigarettes. They may be spending £100 a week on alcohol. They may be spending £100 a month getting their hair done, and these are choices that they make for themselves. I think our job is always to offer patients solutions, what is available, let them have the choices, and the financial implications of those are, it's none of our business really, I think, is where I sit with it as to where they place their value and what they make their choices. We can explain the value of something, but ultimately they will make their decisions as to what matters to them. And I think quite often it's very easy to try to save patients money, and to perhaps not offer solutions because we decide they're too expensive, but they may have a different perspective on that, and to deny them that opportunity is doing them a disservice ultimately. some people buy Ferraris. Some people want the best and are prepared to pay for the best. And then sometimes people buy Ferraris and they can't afford one. Sometimes people can afford 10 Ferraris, but they still drive a little Nissan Note or whatever. That's up to them. That is their business. But we should always show them what is available and explain the benefits of each of them and the costs associated. But that should be their decision. The financial element should absolutely be their decision.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think you mentioned before about the NHS. People, it's changing now, but people have come through that system where it is completely alien to be talking about money, which is, it's been an amazing service, the NHS. But there's also, like, we see it before when you're out and speaking to people, and they might be delivering something with like a sort of real hesitation when they're saying, but it's this, it does cost this, which then doesn't give the clients maybe psychologically they're just like, actually, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Whereas trying to deliver it in a way that, look, these are the options, as you say, as a matter of fact and an honest way as possible. Have you seen any changes with that, with your work with Osgo? Do you do any support for clinics to help with that sort of process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've delivered lots of education. We have resources on the website with lots of courses on the Osgo learning website. Some are completely free to go and access. We talk about this stuff a lot, and I've spoken quite extensively on things like what is a price, how do you decide on a price, and understanding some of our biases that we bring towards it. Because I think historically, when Osgo first started, I think podiatry was massively underpriced. It was undervalued, and I think that came from a place of, it was like everyone charged £25 10 years ago, and it was asking the question, why does everyone charge £25? Well, because they do, and because they do. And if you dig a bit deeper, where did that come from? And I think it came from the people who were leaving the world of the NHS, were setting up on their own, and were like, well, I've got to make a little bit more than what I did in the NHS because I've not got holidays and stuff. And they do the sums and they're like, oh, it's £25 a patient. That gives me a good living. But part of the problem with that was, well, does that build a business, or is that just paying you for a job? Are you actually building a business with that will survive beyond you, that will employ people, that will help develop new graduates, that will attract new graduates, that will create the resilience should you be sick and not able to work for a period of time? And does it reflect the value that you are giving to the patient? So is it actually worth a lot more than £25, and we misjudged it as to the value you're giving to a patient? So it's the questions that kind of got opened up, and there was, I think, at first a reaction to it, and certainly within the profession, there was a whole host of people who were, yeah, absolutely, we need to be charging more. And then there was a lot of opposition. A lot of people were saying, you're just money hungry, you're just after profits, it should be about patients. And the reality always lies somewhere between those two arguments. But I think generally, and I'm giving a blanket statement here, I think podiatry was undervalued 10 years ago quite significantly. I think it's, from my perspective, I think it's approaching much more closer on general to what its real value is. I still think it's probably more than what it's kind of being put out at, but we've certainly seen over the last 10 years, even I know inflation's been crazy, hasn't it, the last couple of years, but there was definitely a movement towards, actually, we should charge more, but we should also be a lot better, because one of the things about charging more is you have to get better. Because there's less places to hide for that, there's less reasons, there's less excuses than if you're a place of having kind of low fees, really. So I think that there's definitely been a change in that, much more of a focus on, giving the very best service, the very best offerings to patients, and then them being priced appropriately for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I'll definitely be intrigued to have a look at some of your resources on that, because I think it's something that we come up with a lot, and I feel like that's something that we can support businesses with as well, where it's not just, right, do you want to pay 15-20 grand for this bit of equipment? It's like, well, it's like, how do we support you? And that's, I think we've got some similar values in that. How do we help businesses grow? We've seen that the private practice is thriving in a lot of different areas because the NHS is under such pressure. So we're seeing. I was at Orth Team Centre just down the road yesterday, and it's packed. It's like people are paying significant amounts of money to go and see. They're seeing the top people, but people are paying for it, which historically I just don't think that was really happening unless you're a real exclusive few. So I think it's a really interesting time in the healthcare sector. And I think it's really important to have people like you and Osgo to be able to support clinics through that, because it's the biggest change I've seen over the last, probably since COVID, of how that model is changing, which is exciting, but it also does bring its own challenges with it of investment into things. It's difficult. Like when you've got your own business, we appreciate it's not easy.
Yes. Yeah, and these things take time, and I suppose you just have to look at the general way the wind is blowing, and I think that things are getting better, which is great. When you look at, if you draw a line from where things were to where they are now, and in the world of private healthcare, it has its own challenges. It has enormous recruitment challenges, doesn't it, across all the disciplines? We see that as a big problem. But I think that's not just healthcare. The whole world seems to be having recruitment problems at the moment, doesn't it? They are the big challenges, and inflation are the other big challenges we're all facing as well.
Yeah, I'm intrigued in terms of recruitment then. So you mentioned you have had some big traumas in your life, and you were mentioning about your daughter, and you were able to step away from the business. So when you're recruiting people, what characteristics are you looking for?
It's a good question. It's a really good question. I suppose that culture fit is really very, very high up. Culture fit is very high up because technical skills, if someone has aptitude, I believe they can pick up technical skills. The thing that always matters to me most is culture fit and people who genuinely care about people. I find that they work really well within these businesses. People who do genuinely care about people, they're the things that really matter. Same with clinicians. Obviously, there's a minimum standard of competence for a certain role. The other would like to have, so the desirable kind of features for technical abilities for things, I find if it's the right person, they can be acquired over time. But yeah, culture fit. So people, and that's basically being personable. They're the things that genuinely matter to me in the businesses here. People who can fit into the team, people who like to work as a team, and people who genuinely care about people, because I find that to be the greatest motivator. Because the other motivators, whether it's financial rewards or discipline, they're not real, they're illusions. I find what genuinely motivates people is when they want to perform for someone else, whether that's their colleagues, whether it's a customer, but if they genuinely want to perform for someone else, I think that's like magic in a business.
Yeah, and how do you assess that? Like if you've got an interview with someone, like how do you assess for that culture fit?
Yeah, so it's about spending time with some of the team. It's about discovering how many questions they ask about people. So it's having kind of different filtered layers to that process, really. So at first you're screening for technical ability. Do they meet a baseline standard? Are they able to actually do the job? Let's find out more about them as a person, and then it's letting them spend some time with the team in a way where they're in a more natural environment where they're not necessarily feeling assessed, and understand a little bit more about them as a person and how they're going to fit into a team of people who are already very person focused in what motivates them, and also trying to dig deep as to what happens in their life, what makes them do things, what is it that drives them for the result. Because the danger with this, Andy, is I could be entirely wrong, and you might end up with just a team of people who are very people focused and don't care about the bottom line as much as. So yeah, I think your business has to be a reflection of your own values and who you are. Otherwise, it's very uncomfortable to work with people whose values are in enormous conflict with your own. And here we always have our little mantra here is we always do the right thing. Is we keep it as simple as that. And when we're stuck on stuff, it always comes back to let's do the right thing, because I think we always know what the right thing is. Emotions can cloud that as you know, as business becomes testing, frustrating, and challenges are presented. But we'll always bring it back to what's the right thing to do, and then we will do the right thing, and we then move on from there.
Mm. And you've always, every time I've met you, you've got a very calm demeanor, and you know, very balanced in the way that you speak about things. How often does that change? Like, how do you manage those sort of stressful periods?
You'd have to ask my kids about that. They probably get to see the worst of it. I think I'm. I think through life, I think I've become pretty resilient to things. The stress happens in the background, and then I normally go decompress away from the situation. I don't think it's ever really seen. I don't think it's really seen in work. I'd like to think if you spoke to people here, maybe they could count on one hand the number of times that they've seen me break out of that kind of calm perspective. Because it doesn't serve anyone, and I think when you're leading anything really, it just does a disservice to everyone else there if they feel uncertain and unsafe. There's no benefit to it. So even if sometimes internally all the walls are closing in and there's catastrophe happening, as does happen in businesses, it's not fair for them to be exposed to that. They have to feel safe in work, and that a lot of that comes from the reaction of those people who are leading stuff. Because I think if they see you are calm, I think it's much more likely that they're able to perform better and be calm themselves.
Yeah. No, I agree on that as well. And so, what are your plans then for Osgo? Like, I know you've got extensive things. You've got a really impressive foot and ankle show going on. But let's talk to me about that, the future of that.
Yeah, so really exciting times at Osgo. The foot and ankle show, the enormous event at the ACC in Liverpool. I think the trade's pretty much sold out now. The ticket sales, we just finished the early bird. They're looking incredible. It's a really, really big event. Pushing on. We've got the digital foot and ankle show, which is free for anyone. So if you're listening, a quick plug for myself with that, if you don't mind, Andy.
Go for it.
It's online, so it's if you go to the footandankleshow.com, there's a digital event which is completely free to sign up for. You get a whole host of CPD education. We get like 3,500 people visiting this and getting education on business, education on foot and ankle health, a whole load of stuff on there, which will help you. I'm sure you will find stuff on there, and it's on for the weekend and it's entirely free. So it's come and grab some of that. We've developed a whole host of new tools, some of which are going to be released over the next couple of months, which I'm not allowed to say what they are yet. On the website, digital tools which make running a practice a whole lot easier. So it's turning into basically it's a virtual head office now. It just does so many things for you, from audits to workflows to your marketing materials, your posts for social media. So yeah, Osgo's continuing to grow. It's continued to grow since its inception, which is wonderful, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But we've got an incredible team who work incredibly hard with that. Also, enormous kind of benefits in pushing forward other brands of products, really, really amazing products like Formthotics, the foot orthoses, which do huge amounts with them, and that's really growing and pushing on as well, and able to solve many patients' problems. So yeah, there's lots of growth happening, and kind of other ventures going on at the same time to kind of keep me occupied.
Yeah, no, you're mentioning that you've been on a couple of international trips recently.
Yeah, so I was out in Prague for Foot Science International Conference. So they're the people who make Formthotics down in New Zealand. They've been going for 40 years, and that was a wonderful conference, and there was incredible to see what they're doing for sustainability for the planet, the work that they're doing as a company, because they manufacture enormous amounts of these insoles, and I know there's lots of news coming out of them, and I won't steal any of their thunder. It's incredible what they've achieved in production out there in New Zealand, to make sure that these orthoses are not going to damage the planet in any way. In fact, being a positive as an organisation of what they do. And also great to meet with distributors from other countries, really, and to see to hear the stories of people from Argentina dealing with 100% inflation, to hear the stories of all the different things happening in the world and how this is affecting business, but also to see the resilience of these individuals and their creativity of how they're rising to these challenges. So that was good. And yeah, we were down at the MOD last week as well. So helping the foot health of the people who keep us safe, which is brilliant, and met with some wonderful physios down there. We delivered some training on form-fotics of allowing them to be able to fit them into boots and the rest of it. So yeah, all good stuff and keeping me on my toes moving about.
Very good. Well, you've definitely achieved your career portfolio goals by the sounds of it. You've got a diverse mix of different things going on. So congrats for doing that.
Yeah, perhaps too many. Maybe retirement's beckoning.
Yeah, no, I can still see the passion in there, which is great to see. But yes, Tony, I really appreciate your insight on that. There's been some things which I was particularly interested in, just talking it through, because I think we've sometimes you just hearing it from the other side, and like you're interacting with a lot of different practices as we are. But I think that perspective of the changing dynamic in private healthcare is really fascinating, and I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with you on that and seeing how the future develops. But other than that, like, I really appreciate your time on this, and yeah, good luck with all of the work that you've got going on, the Foot and Ankles show, and I know we'll catch up at Therapy Expo in a few weeks' time, if not before anyway.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers, Tony. Have a good one. Thanks. Bye-bye.